Good Saturday morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Around the Horn as the Tennessee baseball team advances in the SEC Tournament with a 5-2 win over LSU, joined by Ben McKee from Hoover, Alabama, on this Saturday morning edition of Around the Horn. Ben, Tennessee again, really good, other than the one inning with a couple of boots. But let's start with Chase Dollander. I mean, you've called it for a couple of weeks, the best pitcher in the country and Tennessee's number one guy. Nobody is more dialed in from the get-go, it seems like, than Chase Dollander is. Why is that the case with this guy?
He's just he has a killer mentality, and I don't even know if he realizes that he has a killer mentality. He's always smiling and laughing, and he doesn't show a lot of emotion on the mound. He certainly did tonight after he struck out Trey Morgan to get Tennessee out of the jam in the fifth inning when LSU had the tying run on first in a 3-2 ball game. But I think that's a great question, and I can't put my finger on it. He is just that talented, and I think he's put in a lot of work since he got to Tennessee. Command was a little bit of an issue at Georgia Southern, and he's put in a ton of work since he got here, and I think he's just ready to get out there and just kind of flaunt his stuff, so to speak, and not in a cocky way, because there's nothing cocky about Chase Dollander. But I think he's got a little bit of a killer mentality that he maybe doesn't even realize that he has, and just ready to get out there and go to work. And also, he just wants to get out there and perform well for his teammates. That was one of his talking points tonight after the game. He just wants to get out there and not let anybody down. But he's got it going right now, and I think he's the best player on this baseball team at the moment.
9-0 is his record. Again, he had 9 strikeouts tonight. He goes 99 pitches. Tennessee did have the one inning or the cup back-to-back plays where they kicked it around, but they really also had some really good defensive plays that helped Chase out early in this game. But again, just another rock-solid performance from Tennessee in the field and on the mound with Chase, and then obviously going to the bullpen. I mean, Kirby Connell comes in, he throws one pitch, he gets you out, he gets you out of the inning, and then Redmond Walsh slams the door. I mean, Tennessee's got great depth anyway, but anytime your starter can go as deep as Chase Dollander did, Tennessee's set up great for the rest of this tournament with where they are in their pitching staff right now. At the plate, Tennessee got some good looks, and again, Tennessee jumping on a team early. I mean, you wondered about how this team would handle this weekend and everything. They clearly are trying to make a statement to everybody around the country that it's go time and they're the best team in the country, and they showed that again tonight by jumping on LSU quickly.
Yes, and LSU is the best team Tennessee's faced this year, in my opinion. I think LSU, A&M, Arkansas, probably the other three best teams in the conference that make up the top four. Tennessee obviously being the fourth team and the best out of that trio, but Tennessee didn't play LSU, A&M, or Arkansas, and many believe, again, like I just said, that they're three of the four best teams in the conference, and so this was an opportunity for Tennessee to make a statement, and I think Tennessee definitely made a statement. And look, I don't want to gaslight anybody or anything, but I think the fielding errors there in the fifth inning were just a blip on the radar. And outside of those errors that were a little bit uncharacteristic, you had Seth Stevenson just boot a ball trying to hurry up and get it back in, and he just booted it. And you saw him later in the game kind of in a similar situation just down the left field line. Instead, he does a great job of cutting the ball off on the same play and holding the runner to a single and not a double. Just seemed like he got a little bit ahead of himself on the error that he made earlier. And then Cortland Lawson, he's got to eat that throw. He boots the ball. I think Dylan Cruz got a little bit in his way and messed with his vision there and maybe cost him taking an eye off the ball. And he boots it. Okay, it is what it is, but let that be your only mistake. He then compounds it and throws it over to first, and it gets past Luke, and that allows Cruz to score and make it 3-2. Outside of that, it was pretty much a flawless game. The bats were there. The pitching was obviously there. The base running, no base running mistakes. And again, I think it's a statement. I think LSU is probably the second best team in this conference, and they hadn't been able to play that team yet. And they dominated them. I know the score was pretty close, and maybe I shouldn't say dominate, but it was very clear that Tennessee was a better baseball team.
You know, what impresses me about this Tennessee team as well is just the fact that when they give up something, they answer immediately, and that was just huge in the fifth inning for Tennessee to come back and get the answer that they got with the Gilbert single that scored a run, and then Ortega with the double down the line. I mean, that is this team in a nutshell. I mean, there's no flinch. They just answer the bell immediately, and immediately got it back to a 3-run lead for Chase Dollander. And at that point, you just didn't feel like LSU was going to be able to put the runs across the plate.
No, not at all, especially with the way that Dollander was pitching there. You've got Redmond Walsh come in, and pretty cool night for him, aside from his zipper being undone. He said that his zipper was broken. I don't know what the highlight of the night was. Redmond Walsh having his fly down, or Brent Hubbs getting a shout out on the broadcast there with Hollywood Chris Lowe. I think those were the two pretty cool moments of the night. But yeah, Tennessee was cruising, and I mean, I tweeted it out. It's just very impressive how Tennessee was able to steal back the momentum because of those two errors in the top of the fifth. LSU scores two, makes it a 1-run game. Tennessee fans showed up, and they were great tonight, going toe-to-toe with arguably the best college baseball fans in the country. When you think of college baseball fans and college baseball fan bases, you think of LSU, you think of Mississippi State. LSU showed up tonight, and it was probably 52-48 LSU Tennessee fans. But in that top of the fifth inning, those errors allowed the LSU fans to get into it. You could feel the momentum shifting to LSU's side, and Tennessee just stole it right back and wasted little time doing so. And of course, it's Drew Gilbert in the middle of it. He's always coming through against LSU, going back to last year, and just always coming through in the clutch. But once Tennessee was able to push it back to 3 immediately, it just felt like it was game over for LSU from there.
Yeah, and give Jordan Beck credit too. You know, a lot of people talking about him. Again, you've been talking about spraying the ball around the field, and hits were going to fall for him. Big triple in the first inning to get Tennessee on the board early, to scratch early and kind of set the tone in that game as well. What's Tennessee's plan now? I mean, obviously they're in a great position because they don't have to play twice later today. They get the later game, and they're going to get the winner of LSU and Kentucky. What do you expect Tony Vitello to do on the mound with this team, and where do they go from here?
Well, first, I want to point out something on Jordan Beck not hitting. That catch he made over there in the right field corner was phenomenal. That was a big league play, and that's why professional teams, organizations are so in love with him, is because, yes, he hits for power. He's a great hitter. He has tools that project to the major league level, but so does his defense. His arm is an absolute cannon. One of these days, teams are going to learn to quit running on him, and he can track down fly balls out there. I'm not saying he is Aaron Judge, but he reminds me of Aaron Judge in right field. Everybody looks at Aaron Judge and thinks of him as a power hitter, and that being the only thing that he can do. But Aaron Judge is a Gold Glove winning right fielder, and I think Jordan Beck can be as effective defensively in his pro career as he can be as a hitter, and that saved 2 runs. So he was +4 in the run category there in the first 2 innings, obviously producing 2 runs, RBI triple that you mentioned, scores on a wild pitch, and then he saved 2 runs there to get Tennessee out of the inning. But in terms of the pitching tomorrow, Tony was asked about it. He said that they'll make a decision. You made a great point of the biggest thing is just that Tennessee avoided having to play 2 games tomorrow. If they would have lost tonight, they would have had to turn around at 1:30 in the morning, get back to the hotel, wake up at a decently early time tomorrow and play the second game of the day, probably around noon, 1 o'clock local time. And if they beat Kentucky in that game, then they've got to turn around and play at night against LSU once again. So that was the biggest thing tonight in terms of winning is you avoid that situation. That would not have been fun. But again, Tony sidestepped the pitching question for tomorrow, said that they'll make some decisions and talk about it. I would be surprised if it's not Chase Burns tomorrow. We'll see. But you also made another great point, and that's that the pitching is set up in a perfectly good spot right now. You got plenty of arms available. You haven't taxed anybody. Really, the only 2 guys that aren't available at this point is Blake Tidwell and Chase Dollander. Everybody else, free game. Redmond Walsh maybe isn't able to come back immediately tomorrow, but he'll be available on Sunday. Don't know how many pitches he threw, but again, he's a guy that can throw multiple times and multiple innings over the course of a weekend. So I think that they'll ride with Chase Burns tomorrow night against what I assume will be LSU, assuming LSU can beat Kentucky, but Kentucky's been pesky this week in Hoover. It'll be a fun rematch tomorrow night, I think, and I think it'll be Chase Burns on the mound. And then I would assume Drew Beam on Sunday if Tennessee makes it to Sunday.
Well, one thing we know, Tennessee would look forward to an opportunity to play either one of those teams because they certainly want to get back at Kentucky if Kentucky is the draw tomorrow. Interesting, Chase Burns in the bullpen tonight in the ninth inning. Wasn't really warming up, but he was tossing the ball around a little bit, which was maybe that was just a, hey, I want to stay loose. I don't think they were ever going to go to him in the ninth, but that was kind of an interesting look for a guy who might
Yeah,
be starting a little bit later today.
yeah, and that definitely throws off my thought that Chase Burns is going to start tomorrow if they were willing to throw him in there tonight in the ninth inning. I think it's more of it just being that time of year to where it's close ball games in the postseason. You're going to put whoever on the mound in whatever situation, regardless of what role they had played up until this point in the season. So I think it's a situation of just having Chase Burns ready in case Redmond runs into trouble there in the top of the ninth. And if you have to come in and use Chase Burns in that situation, then maybe you go to a Drew Beam, a Ben Joyce, a Camden Sewell to start tomorrow night's game. And then Chase, after throwing to a hitter or two, could come back on Sunday, theoretically, in the championship game. Or hey, if he throws to a batter or two, he can still come back tomorrow, assuming he doesn't throw 20, 30 pitches. He throws 5 to 10 pitches and gets one guy out, which is probably what they were targeting if he were to come in. He could have come back tomorrow and start. So I'm not going to read too much into it. Maybe I look like a fool tomorrow night when Tennessee announces the starting pitcher, but I think it was just more of a product of it being that time of year, all hands on deck. Tony Vitello's been preaching that roles have flown out the window at this point in the season, and you've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable and ready to come in and play at any moment and help the team get the win at all costs necessary.
Well, this is a team that looks very comfortable right now. There's not a lot of uncomfortable things about this baseball team as they're 2-0 in Hoover and SEC play, getting ready for the semifinal game coming up later tonight. We'll have full coverage of that from Hoover as well. That's going to do it for this edition of Around the Horn as Tennessee beats LSU by a score of 5-2. For Ben McKee, I'm Brent Hubbs, Volquest.com.